Hi, welcome to In Sync, the podcast that explores the history and impact of some of your favorite music moments in TV and film. I'm your host, Rachel Brodsky.
And I'm Aviv Rubenstein.
Between its record-shattering soundtrack, a classic Romeo and Juliet meets coming-of-age plot, and groundbreaking dance routines, the 1987 romantic drama Dirty Dancing is by far one of the most beloved movie franchises in history.
Though Dirty Dancing's soundtrack is a behemoth unto itself, packed with both early 60s pop songs and original music, no track is more inexorably linked to the film than its theme song, I've Had the Time of My Life, composed by Frankie Previtt, John DeNicola, and Donald Markowitz. Recorded by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. Quick fun fact, Previtt and DeNicola also wrote another Dirty Dancing original song, Hungry Eyes, which was recorded by Eric Carmen.
On this episode of In Sync, we're talking about the history and impact of I've Had the Time of My Life, one of Aviv's favorite songs. Just kidding, he really hates it. How it was released a few weeks before the film and almost did a total chart belly flop, and what its legacy is today.
And we've also got a super special guest on the pod, culture journalist Jake Kring-Schreifels, who in 2020 wrote an essay for The Ringer called How I've Had the Time of My Life Saved Dirty Dancing.
All that and more on this episode of In Sync.
You just put your pickle on everybody's plate, college boy, and leave the hard stuff to me.
So Jake, it's so good to have you with us. Thank you for taking time out of your day to help us break down this all-time music moment. Will you please tell us about yourself and how you came to write an essay about Dirty Dancing and I've Had the Time of My Life?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure. I did not really have a great connection with this movie. I've honestly listened to this song ad nauseum at weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, the like, and never really watched the movie. I just felt like, okay, this is part of the movie, but I never felt like I needed to watch it. It wasn't as big in my cultural sphere. But at a certain point, when the pandemic hit and I was trying to figure out story ideas, The Ringer had kind of come up with this fun summer blockbuster series to kind of fill the void for all of the missing movies we were getting that summer. And they were doing anniversaries. So, okay, August is coming up. What would be a fun anniversary blockbuster to go through? And this is funny because it's not even really a blockbuster in the regular sense. I mean, this was made on like a $6 million budget. So I was thinking about, okay, well, maybe if I pitched an idea about the song, because that's the thing that I think most people associate with this movie. And I just thought, well, everyone's done this story in a certain way. They've talked to Frankie Previtt, or maybe they just did a one-off with Bill Medley. But do we actually know like the full arc and evolution of how this story was made, how this song got into this movie in the first place? So that was my real introduction. Was I just like finding ways to make a comprehensive story and figure out how one cultural phenomenon becomes a thing. So that was my into it. I just wanted to figure out a way that I could write a story for a month where it was pretty much dead in August in 2020. Needed something to kind of fill my plate, and I figured this would be a great song because I like this song and I want to figure out how this was in the movie.
Honestly, that's
Why you're here today on the show.
That's funny because it's like a little bit more clinical than I was expecting, but I give you props. You're just a smart journalist in that way. You create some work.
I don't have the origin story of like, well, when I was 3 years old, I heard this song.
But I think that's like everybody's origin story. I mean, that's probably my origin story. I'm just being the age I am and growing up watching the movie and seeing I never heard the song before the movie, but I was going to bug Aviv about, like, I know I'm getting super ahead of myself and trying to, like, twist Aviv's arm into not necessarily liking the song, but to respect it. Respect it because
I don't dislike the song.
Okay, and I think that Jake's essay really proved this, that the movie and the song could not exist without each other. They lift each other up. They are the baby and the Patrick
and the Johnny.
No pun
Johnny.
Intended there. No pun. Lift each other
That's
up.
exactly what I mean. That's exactly
pun intended.
Pun very much intended.
So we love a good forensic analysis on this show, and we're going to give Jake and Rachel the chance to explain to me why I'm so incredibly wrong about not liking this cue in this movie. But first, a little bit of background on the movie itself. Dirty Dancing is a film that, having never seen it until a few years ago, lived in my head as one thing for decades. So similar to Jake's story, I didn't grow up with the film. I knew it as a thing, quote unquote, for girls, right? And not that it was bad. That was just like a thing that didn't super appeal to me. I'm not like big into dancing. And through pop culture osmosis, I had built a plot and even provided context to one of the movie's most iconic lines, which is nobody puts baby in a corner. But when I finally caught up with the movie in my 30s, I was shocked to discover an entirely different movie than the one I had built in my head. So Dirty Dancing is set in 1963, and it takes place at like a family getaway resort camp thing in the Catskills.
Like summer camp for adults.
Yeah. There's canoeing.
And charades.
Frances Baby Hausman, read Jewish, played by Jennifer Grey, who is the real-life daughter of legendary cabaret song and dance phenomenon Joel Grey. She's vacationing with her family, cardiologist, read Jewish. Her cardiologist, read Jewish father, Jake, played by Law & Order's Jerry Orbach, and her mother, Marge, played by Kelly Bishop, who I'm told is a Gilmore Girl.
She is the grandmother.
The eldest Gilmore.
The eldest Gilmore. Actually,
Yes.
That's not true. There's, well, she married into the Gilmore family.
Oh, okay.
And her husband, Richard Gilmore, his mother, I guess, would technically be the eldest Gilmore.
They're also with the older sister, Lisa, who has no connection to the Gilmore Girls. So Baby secretly observes the owner of the resort, Max Kellerman, instructing the waiters, who are all Ivy League students, to romance the guests' daughters, no matter how unattractive.
Even the dogs.
Even the dogs. I didn't want to say that until Rachel said it.
I think I'm the only one here who can say it.
Max also demeans the working class entertainment staff. These are the people that teach aerobics and canoeing and most importantly, dance.
They're not college educated.
Yeah, the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah.
Including Johnny Castle, one of the dance instructors played by Patrick Swayze, who, of any of those 80s actors, has the greatest character names.
Yes. I was going to say Johnny Castle is unbelievable.
Bodie from Point Break. John Roadhouse from Roadhouse.
What's his name in Ghost?
I don't know.
I'm like, I like all the girly Patrick Swayze movies.
So Baby meets Johnny at a secret after-hours dirty dancing club, and thus begins a love triangle between Baby, her would-be suitor Neil, who is the owner's son, and Johnny, but no one is a match for Swayze. Meanwhile, Johnny's dance partner Penny is pregnant via a dalliance with Robbie, who is one of those Ivy League prick waiters. Robbie fucks off to ruin another girl's life, and Penny gets a back alley abortion, which leaves her in horrible shape, so much so that Baby has to risk her reputation and ask her cardiologist father to treat Penny. There is a ton of intrigue involving Johnny getting propositioned by one of the guests, Lisa, Baby's sister, trying to throw herself at Robbie the fuckwit, and some real upstairs downstairs shit where like Johnny is accused of stealing and is fired, and it turns out one of the guests is stealing, and that guest was originally supposed to be played by Dr. Ruth Westheimer. It's a whole thing. So he can't perform in the big talent show at the end of the season. So at this talent show, Baby is seated kind of in the corner of the room. Johnny bursts in, finds Baby, tells her that she's not allowed to sit in a corner. And then they do their final big talent show performance to the song of the week. So before we talk about the song, I'd like to briefly discuss the meaning of this famous line, nobody puts baby in a corner. I, having not seen the movie for my entire life, did not know that this was not a metaphor. I thought that this was like, you're backed into the corner and then no one's going to put you in the corner and you're going to overcome, right?
But it is sort of a metaphor too, isn't it?
Yes.
Because
However,
you're not going to put her in a metaphorical or literal corner.
However, imagine you're me watching this movie for the first time thinking that it's entirely metaphorical. And then it's like, no, or I also didn't know that someone in the movie was named Baby. So I thought that he was like talking to himself, where he's like boxing and he's like, oh, you're in the corner and no one's going to put you in the corner. So I always thought Johnny was talking to himself, saying like, you've backed me into the corner. Now I'm going to overcome. So imagine my surprise when that's not what happened at all.
Well, the other thing about this is I heard allegedly that Patrick Swayze hated this line so much.
He did. We have a clip.
So there's that element, but also, does he even know that baby was put in the corner? She's just sitting. She could have just sat there out of her own volition.
Correct.
Well, if she sat there of her own volition, it's probably because she already feels, because she begins the family vacation feeling totally unnoticed, more or less, except for by like Neil, the the wanker, Cornell dickhead business guy. And it's like the coming of age thing of the film where she has not yet transcended. I mean, she's almost there because they haven't done the final dance yet, but probably for the moment, she's feeling very down and not great about herself. She's probably just like retreating back into where she's got to like just be in her family structure. Because her sister Lisa is the more outgoing, and she's the one in like the end of the summer talent show, and
she's the one that's trying to fuck Robbie.
She's the joiner, and baby is kind of the wallflower.
But nobody includes yourself, so nobody puts baby in the corner, including baby.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. He's not only admonishing her father, he's admonishing baby for putting herself in that position.
So famously, Patrick Swayze hated saying this line, did not fucking get it. Same as me. And so he talked to AFI shortly before his death about coming to terms with having to say this line.
I hated that line. Nobody puts baby in a corner. And it was only because I didn't understand what was behind it. I was thinking it's time for Patrick Swayze as Johnny Castle to come back into this room and do his big dance number. And it was only when I found what was behind that line, that it wasn't about getting ready to do the big dance number of the movie with the girl that you were never going to be able to have because she was always going to be out of your league. It was about coming back to serve. You know, there's an Eastern adage that says only when one learns to serve can one truly be master. And it was when I started this kind of thought and looking beneath the surface was when that line worked for me, to where when I went up and said that to her, I truly believed it. But up until that point, and up until I found that background and that passion as an actor, I hated that line. I was going to do anything in my power to get it cut.
So never did I expect there to be like an Eastern philosophy angle for nobody puts baby in a corner, but I suppose I didn't know what to expect. The film was directed by Emile Ardolino, who after this went on to direct the truly bizarre rom-com Chances Are with a young Robert Downey Jr. and Sybil Shepherd. Have either of you heard of this movie?
I have not.
This movie is wild. So Sybil Shepherd's husband, Ryan O'Neal, dies. Sybil Shepherd, I can't remember who it is. Sybil Shepherd's husband dies and is reincarnated as Robert Downey Jr., who is in love with Sybil Shepherd because he still retains some of his memories from his past life. Then an angel realizes the mistake that was made in the reincarnation, allowing Robert Downey Jr. to keep his memories, and is chasing Robert Downey Jr. as he's trying to fuck Sybil Shepherd to like erase his memory. In the end, it works. And Robert Downey Jr., the reincarnation of Sybil Shepherd's husband, falls in love with Sybil Shepherd's daughter, his own daughter. It is so fucking weird.
I don't know why, but that reminds me of like a more convoluted prelude to a kiss.
Okay, I buy that for $1. Ardolino also directed Three Men and a Little Lady and Sister Act. So I would say that Dirty Dancing is his strongest film.
Followed by Sister Act. It's a very close second.
Close second, Sister.
Yeah.
I actually really love
Sister Act.
I'm trying to trace the connection there, Patrick Swayze to Whoopi in Ghost, and then Whoopi into Sister Act.
Well, Whoopi famously replaced Bette Midler last minute for Sister Act.
I could see that.
So it's also possible that Ardolino had like some hand in that, because Whoopi had done Ghost in between Dirty Dancing and Sister Act. But the real auteur of the film is Eleanor Bergstein, who wrote a semi-autobiographical screenplay retelling events from her own teenage years. Like Baby Hausman, Bergstein came from a liberal Jewish family who visited Catskill resorts during the 60s. Her father was a doctor. She was nicknamed Baby until she was 22 years old. She even had a relationship with a much older dance instructor. So the character of Johnny Castle is based on a dance instructor named Michael Terrence. But Eleanor's life also influenced Swayze's character because, like Johnny Castle, Bergstein was a skilled dirty dancer who learned at house parties and later became a dance instructor herself. So Jennifer Grey stars as Baby, and she was 26 playing 17, which isn't all that crazy, but every article about the movie is like, and did you know she was 26? Which, like, watch any show or movie about
I mean, look at half of the 25-year-olds
exactly
playing 17-year-olds on Beverly Hills 90210. I mean, I feel like
or like Euphoria now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they will be 25 or 26 by the time the next season rolls around.
And Swayze was 34 playing 24, which is like a little tougher pill to swallow visually, but like
he does look old.
Kelly Bishop wasn't much older than Patrick Swayze at the time.
Right. Because Kelly Bishop playing Baby's mom was like in her early 50s, right?
I think so, but she's only maybe 13 years older than him.
Yeah.
I think that, like, being even as actors in the last decade, looking in your 30s is just very different.
True.
Yeah.
And Kelly Bishop playing Baby's mom was kind of a last minute addition because the original actor that was cast to play Mrs. Hausman had to leave after a week of shooting. And so they called up Kelly Bishop, who was originally the woman who propositions Robbie or accuses Johnny of stealing or whatever. In alternate reality casting news, along with Jennifer Grey, Sarah Jessica Parker and Winona Ryder, Jewish, were considered for Baby, and Benicio del Toro, Billy Zane, and noted on-set terror Val Kilmer were all considered for Johnny. And according to The Movies That Made Us on Netflix, Eleanor Bergstein cast Swayze because of his eyes. Quote, "I wanted hooded eyes," Bergstein said. "So we went through picture after picture, and I said, those are the eyes that I want."
Can I just tell you real quick, and I'm sure there's a moment for it, but like, this doesn't even really have to do with anyone's age, but given the intense 80s-ness of everybody's hair in this movie, when I grew up watching Dirty Dancing, I just did not know. I did not realize it was meant to take place in the early 60s for decades.
And I think that might be why the song works better for you than it does for me. Because in my 30s, watching this movie that was made in the 80s take place in the 60s, it did show a very specific time and place for most of it. And then it kind of like changed, but we'll talk about that a little bit.
We'll get into it. Yeah.
Jennifer Grey was not a big fan of Swayze's. They worked together on the original Red Dawn in 84 and apparently clashed. This is from People. "She begged us to have anyone but Patrick," Eleanor Bergstein said. The pair had worked together in the 1984 film Red Dawn and had not gotten along, but when Bergstein explained that Grey did not want to do the film with him, Swayze offered to talk with Jennifer. He went in alone and sat with Jennifer for about a half an hour, and they came out with their eyes red, and the pair was solidified as Johnny and Baby.
I'd like to offer some context there.
Yes.
Have either of you read Jennifer Grey's autobiography that came out in the last year? It's very good. I recommend it. She is a very good writer. She talks about her nose. She kind of opens with all that. And
it's real rough, man.
Offers some great context for why she even got a nose job in the first place.
It's so sad that her entire career was based on people making fun of her nose. And then as soon as she took that away, people are like, well, we don't care about you anymore.
Yes. She writes about having trouble, regardless of what a successful movie this was. She writes about having trouble even getting roles that she would want after Dirty Dancing. And she writes about how her mother got a nose job and her father got a nose job. And she has this whole history in her family of everybody getting nose jobs because there's this cultural pressure for Jewish actors to look less Jewish. And it's just kind of baked into the, well, if you want a career in show business, it's like why they never come out like and mention and say straight up, this is a Jewish resort, or like for a lot of Jewish families, it's like you had to really tone down the Jewishness for decades. So this role just happened to be perfect for her at the time. But she did have kind of a squabble with, I think her thing with like Patrick Swayze got a bit blown out of proportion, really, because when she writes about it, she mentions that like she's much younger than he is when they're making Red Dawn, and she takes this very seriously, and she wants to do her job and do it well. And I guess Patrick was kind of like joking around and like holding things up and like flubbing his lines. And I think one scene in particular got messed up for her. And I would need the book in front of me to like really get it absolutely right. But it was like one interaction just made her decide, okay, I don't like you. Like this isn't going to work.
And partially it's Patrick kind of stealing her thunder, which I think she sees this as a big opportunity for her. And as Jake mentioned, this is kind of a low budget film. They only had 3 months to do this soup to nuts. So like if he's flubbing his lines and holding up production, like that's going to fuck things up for them. I think a lot goes into it other than just like, I don't like you. I don't think it's completely, out of nowhere that they clashed a little bit.
She does write about how in the moment he's such a charming person and how everybody loved him so much. And she does write like, in this time and place, I loved him too.
What's weird is it's almost the reverse, I think, in Dirty Dancing. It seemed like she couldn't take herself seriously in this movie, and Patrick Swayze was so dead set on getting this right.
Because he's like a
trained
ballet.
full dancer.
Yeah.
You read my mind, yeah.
That whole scene where, you know, she's putting the arm down he's putting his arm down her armpit, and, you know, she keeps flubbing and joking and laughing because it tickles, and he's actually very angry.
Yeah.
And they keep those scenes in.
Yeah. And I think that is, I don't know if it was her revenge, but I think it's like a little bit of turnabout is fair play. Speaking of those dance scenes, the dance scenes in the film, a lot of them were improvised. The tickling one was improvised, but most of them were choreographed by Kenny Ortega. And he used their real life kind of tension to fuel Baby and Johnny's chemistry on screen. He told People in 2017, both of them brought so much every day. Sometimes it was conflict. Sometimes it was love. There was something there between the two of them that was unexplainable. They were human fireworks. It's worth noting that Gray was dating her Ferris Bueller co-star at the time, Matthew Broderick, who makes like an uncredited cameo at the end of the movie. But like, if you're Matthew Broderick, you're scared that Mr. Steal Your Girl is going to steal your girl.
He apparently was kind of threatened by...
Kind of a dick.
He was kind of a dick. And probably things have changed. Who knows? But at the time, she, again, really recommend her autobiography because she writes about how he's like Mr. Hot Thing in Hollywood at the time, right? Especially following Ferris Bueller. And he can't really deal with Jennifer Grey's like just explosion success, or it's just like a tension in their relationship.
A tension and like love matched in the movie with literally the hottest person that's ever lived, right? Like,
he's an Adonis.
Yeah. Kenny Ortega, the choreographer, went on to direct Newsies, Hocus Pocus, and the High School Musical movies, which themselves started out as Grease sequels.
Not bad.
Yeah, right? Good job, Kenny Ortega. And he's choreographed like a million gajillion things. He's like the Hollywood choreographer to get. Originally, the project was called I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen. This is from Collider. And producer Linda Gottlieb convinced Bergstein to go to lunch, and the two of them came up with a better title. They were worried. There's some like conflicting reports on like when this changed, but they were worried that when they were telling people what the name of the movie was, I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen, would like imply like they were doing a porno.
Which is funny because I think everyone thought when they were asked to work on the movie, from the music end at least, that it was a porno.
Right.
Given the name they ended up with. And
Eleanor Bergstein told this story about how she like used to sneak on the wrong side of the tracks and go to dirty dancing clubs. And it was like, according to Collider, like this walk the line moment where Linda Gottlieb is like, dirty dancing clubs, you say? And that's how they came up with the title Dirty Dancing. The abortion subplot did not just come as a surprise to me when I was watching it in my 30s, but also to some corporate sponsors. This is from E. In order to secure corporate sponsorship, producers asked Eleanor to take Penny's abortion out of the script. And Eleanor said, I always had known this would happen one day, which is like a real, like, they'd come for me. I said, hey, I would love to, but I can't, because if I take it out, everything will fall apart. There's no story without that. Everything just crumbles. Nothing will make sense.
Yeah, like, why would Baby take her place in the Sheldrake performance?
Right.
Why would they even need to dance together in the first place?
And so the producers go to the corporate sponsors and say, oh, too bad. We should have thought of that sooner. And then, like, we can't do it, which is something that I too have experienced in movies. As a writer of screenplays, I firmly believe that every scene should be important, because if a scene isn't important, why is it in the movie? And then I have been approached by producers while we're either in pre-production or production or post, being like, let's cut some scenes out because it's too long, or this is not, whatever. And they ask me what scenes are unimportant. And the answer should always be like, none of them are unimportant. So I'm glad that Bergstein kept her. I keep going back and forth with Steenstein, so I'm right half the time. Bergstein held her ground and kept this subplot.
By the way, I don't know if you have this later in the notes, but there were a lot of like issues that plagued this shoot.
So many. I didn't get into that, but I would love for you to. Okay.
Well, one of the things Eleanor told me was this was being shot in late August, September in Virginia, in North Carolina. The leaves were starting to change, and this obviously takes place in the summer. They had people paint the leaves green on the trees. Jennifer Grey got stung by a wasp, I believe, and Patrick Swayze injured his knee.
Yeah,
and this is all within 6 weeks of trying to get this down.
Plus, it was like incredibly cold. All of the water stuff that they were doing is cold in the summer because it's like glacial runoff or whatever, but like it's like extra cold when it's September.
Yeah. I read in Ray's book that she also provided a lot of her own clothes that she brought with her, like, because they were so secluded that in order to get what they needed, could be anything, and in this case, wardrobe, that they actually, like, they couldn't just go out to a mall and source wardrobe.
And that's not super rare for actors to bring their own wardrobe to pick from. It is rare, however, for the lead actor to bring their own wardrobe, and for a movie that made $214 million at the box office in 1987 to be like, Jennifer's got to wear her own shit.
It turned out, I think it was just like what had to happen. I mean, I think they had brought wardrobe for her, but I do not recall why they ran out.
Sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah.
The other thing that Eleanor told me, which was really funny, because this movie was so low budget, they ran out of food by the time they were doing this finale scene. And so they had all these extras that like had really no food. And so she would like steal peanut butter crackers and give them out to the extra dancers.
Hell yeah.
Just to keep them satisfied.
Oh my God. And like, you really need to keep, especially people who are
fined from SAG on that one.
Yeah. These people are spending it.
It was funny too. She's like, oh yeah, I mean, I cried every morning, but I would just take cucumber slices and put them on my eyes just so that people didn't see I was crying.
Oh my God.
I mean, low budget filmmaking is really rough. And we look at it now as this was like a box office juggernaut eventually. But yeah, this was supposed to be a very modest movie that somehow caught fire. The somehow, spoilers, has to do with our song of the week. But after watching the initial cut of the movie, the producers had very little faith in it. According to Eleanor, producer Aaron Ross told us to burn the negative and take the insurance. Everyone told us constantly what a negligible piece of shit it was.
Yeah, this was like the little movie that could, because nobody believed in it.
They were considering doing a direct-to-video release, which was, at this point, a complete kiss of death for a movie.
She had said that she was going to even she had gone to the movie theaters where it was being played initially and was ready to like pay people money for having wasted their money on the movie. And
so
the box office. She was like, I was going to just pay them for going because I felt bad they had to watch what they were watching.
But the film was a hit. bolstered by the soundtrack. The soundtrack held #1 spot on Billboard album charts for over 4 months. It sold 14 million copies. I've Had the Time of My Life went on to win the Oscar for Best Original Song. And ultimately, Dirty Dancing made $214 million just in theaters. And that is $571 million in 2023 dollars. So she's doing like Marvel movie numbers. And that's just in theaters. Dirty Dancing became the first film to sell more than 1 million copies for home video. Back when home videos cost like $50.
Do you want to hear something funny regarding the way that I got into this movie?
I'm sure it was on like a grainy VHS.
It was kind of, except that my parents taped it off of TV and it came with and so it was like the edited for TV version. So when Penny says, well, you know what, baby, you don't know shit about my problems. It was like the shit was cut out. So it was like, well, you know what, baby, you don't know about my problems.
Yeah.
And so there's like some stuff that like I did not hear until I got older and like got to just watch it all the way through on streaming. But my version of Dirty Dancing had all of the 80s commercials
That's amazing.
in there. So that those commercials for me for years were just like part of the whole Dirty Dancing experience.
I have a similar, so I still don't think I've ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off without commercials.
Wow.
Because like I've only ever watched it on like Comedy Central on a Saturday afternoon. But when I was a kid, this was like around the same era, my babysitter had taped the 1989 Batman movie off of TV for me. And the tape ran out in the last, I want to say like 3 minutes of the movie. And so, you know, for the first 25 years of my life, I did not know what the last 3 minutes of the movie were, which is like, you know, he drops the Joker off the building. Like everything's like basically done. Except for like, there's like one scene that I was missing. And, that was a big surprise when I watched it on streaming for the first time in like 2015.
That's great.
Of course, a sleeper hit like this requires more than one bite at the apple. So along with the prequel movie, which people are relatively familiar with, Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, CBS created a Dirty Dancing television series. Only lasted 11 episodes in 1988. Patrick Cassidy and Melora Harding, Jan Levinson from The Office, co-starred as Johnny and Baby. And it's interesting that Jake mentions how short Baby was, how short Jennifer Grey is, because Melora Harding is like very tall and famously was fired from Back to the Future because she was taller than Michael J. Fox. Or too tall for Michael J. Fox, let's say.
Yeah.
And so, poor Melora had like so many near misses before she had a hit with The Office. So the show is basically a retelling of the film with a couple of notable exceptions. The abortion subplot is gone because it's CBS in 1990.
Oh, yeah.
And now Baby is the daughter of Max Kellerman, the owner of the resort. And she's like in charge of the entertainment troupe and she's like Johnny's boss and meets him that way. You know, I don't know if you can watch the episodes on YouTube. I don't know if you need to.
I won't.
But I'll give you 3 guesses to the show's theme song. You'll only need one.
Is it the song we're here to talk about?
It's the song we're here to talk about today. So let's jump into our music section and talk a little bit about the history of I've Had the Time of My Life.
So we've talked about how Frankie Previte is kind of like the force behind writing I've Had the Time of My Life. So the whole movie has such an interesting crossover between 80s artists and then 60s artists writing and singing 80s songs. And one example is Mary Clayton.
Oh, yeah.
Mary Clayton is the voice behind Yes, which was written for this movie as well. And it's the song that closes out. Well, at first you hear it when Lisa is walking up to Robbie's bunk to proposition him and finds him in bed with another woman, the woman that Johnny was previously sleeping with. And then you hear Yes on the closing credits. I love this song, and if we could talk about more than one song, I want to talk about that. But Mary Clayton was also on Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones. She is the voice you hear in that song. And she's also, I think, in that documentary about background singers.
Yes, 20 Feet from Stardom.
Yeah, 20 Feet from Stardom.
She's the one that deserves 50 years worth of royalties for singing on Gimme Shelter.
Yeah.
And hasn't gotten them.
And that's when they isolate those vocals too. And it's incredible to hear.
And you hear Jagger like screaming in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But I'll get back to Frankie real quick. He was the lead singer of the New Jersey pop rock band Frankie and the Knockouts, who when I first read that band name, I thought, oh, this is a 60s band that they're bringing back. But no, they're an early 80s band. And he had some success with the song Sweetheart in 1981. But by 1986, he was without a recording contract. And so by late 86, early 87, the producer of Millennium Records, Jimmy Ienner, or Einer, is it Einer?
Einer, yeah.
Yeah. So if you notice when the credits start to roll on Dirty Dancing, the original movie, they give a special thanks to Jimmy Ienner. And it's really, I think, thanks to Jimmy Ienner that the whole soundtrack got put into place. And he really had to do a lot of convincing for a lot of singers because they went to a lot of people for a lot of the original songs, and a lot of people said no because they thought that the title Dirty Dancing was a porn. And it was tough because Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze, they were actors, but they were not like A-list names yet. And
especially because Ferris Bueller's Day Off was like still like starting to hit. So it wasn't exactly like she was a household name yet.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole movie, like it's just, and you know that you both know this, but like, it's so hard to get anyone to sign on to anything when there's not like a big name attached to it somewhere. And there's really none of that in this whole movie. So that's why I always want to call it the little movie that could. Jimmy Ienner asked Previtt about writing some music for, quote, a little movie called Dirty Dancing. Previtt initially turned down the request because he was trying to get a record deal and he thought the film was a porn, as said. And Ienner was really, really persistent. He was like, this is going to change your life. And ultimately, Previtt did write a few songs for the movie, including I've Had the Time of My Life and Hungry Eyes, which was recorded.
I didn't know until the recording of this episode that Hungry Eyes was written for this movie.
It was.
Hungry Eyes rules.
Yeah. It is a great song. Any of the songs on, because this whole soundtrack is such a mishmash of like 80s songs. This is why, again, I was so like between the hair and the wardrobe and
it's confusing.
It's really confusing because like in some of the dance sequences, Baby and Penny are wearing very 80s looking outfits, like giant mid torso belts that scream 80s, and no one would be blamed for not fully realizing like what decade this is supposed to take place in. But like the 80s really romanticized the 60s in the way that the 90s romanticized the 70s. So it is also kind of makes sense in the end why they're overlapping like that visually and sonically.
Hungry Eyes, by the way, I think they were originally planning to put the song. I don't know how they were going to do this because it doesn't really make sense. But when she's carrying the watermelons up to the cabin where everyone's dancing, that they were going to try to put it in there, and then they realized, okay, this doesn't work. Let's find another spot, and then they found the better spot.
I can kind of see it working there. It's like a little, you got to lean away from like the longing and a little bit more into like the 80s montage of it all. But yeah,
the 80s montage.
It's a better place where they have it in the movie.
Two things. So one, in all of the actual like underground club Dirty Dancing with the Kellerman staff, I think you only ever hear late 50s or early 60s songs. Like it's all time appropriate. Like you hear a lot of Otis Redding and Solomon Burke with like the montage moments. You hear more like 80s songs like Aviv was saying. So I rewatched Dirty Dancing just the other day to prep for the episode, and I was like, I've never thought about this before, but what were the watermelons for? Were they just for snacks?
Strength?
Are they going to inject vodka in them and have like a party favor?
I shit you not. I was always, because like I watched The Karate Kid a lot, and so I thought that this was like a montage to make her stronger. That's why she was carrying the watermelon.
They're just there. I guess they're party favors and snacks.
It's kind of like the orange slices after a soccer game. Maybe it's like watermelon after Dirty Dancing.
Get your electrolytes back up. We're going to do an Instagram poll as a part of this episode. Listeners, did you think that baby carrying the watermelon was for snacks or for strength?
Or for vodka injection.
Or for getting drunk.
Yeah,
Vote now.
Yeah. Okay. So Previtt wrote the lyrics, and the music was written by John DeNicola and Don Markovitz.
We're talking about the lyrics to I've Had the Time of My Life.
Yes, we're back on I've Had the Time of My Life.
Correct.
So this is a really fun New Jersey-centric fact, and I'm from New Jersey, and I got excited reading this fun fact, but Previtt apparently came up with the title I've Had the Time of My Life in a very ironic way, because he was apparently driving down the Garden State Parkway, which is the opposite of having the time of your life. I don't know if you've ever, for anyone who has driven on the Parkway, if you know, that is the most stressful highway because it has like 10 lanes, all in like the closest. You cannot drive an SUV, not that I would, but you cannot drive a large car in like the middle lane of all of these lanes without like getting your side mirror knocked off. It's just a very claustrophobic experience. So I'm amazed that he had a moment.
The time of his life.
I'm amazed that he thought about anything involving the time of his life.
That's like the song Dancing in the Moonlight was like written about like a malicious, violent attack. And he's like, what if this didn't happen? What if this wasn't miserable?
I think for being a Jersey-born guy, though, it kind of makes sense because it's almost like your shower thoughts, like driving on the Parkway. Like he's done that so many times in his life, and it's probably where all the inspiration comes from. He's just zoning out. He's just like, I can't believe I'm on here again. Puts in the cassette tape. Here's some of the music. All right. And then he just goes into his thing.
Yeah, I think the Turnpike makes better sense for shower thoughts, but I get it because
Rachel's really drawing a line between Turnpike and Parkway here.
the Parkway has there's no time between exits. Every exit comes up so quick, and on the Turnpike you can really zone out between exit 8 and exit 8A. I speak from experience.
Shout out to my favorite song about the Garden State Parkway, Titus Andronicus's "A More Perfect Union."
Oh, yes. Love Titus Andronicus.
Hell yeah.
Anyhow, Previtt told American Songwriter in 2020, Einer had a good feeling about I've Had the Time of My Life. He gave me a short description of the movie and said, the good news is you can write the song. The bad news is it's got to be 7 minutes long. So I'm thinking MacArthur Park and songs like that. My songwriting partner, John D. Nicola, and I were writing and making demos, trying to get a record deal. I was introduced to John by David Prater,
It looks like Prater.
Who had a studio in his basement in Montclair. This is so Jersey, I love it, where I would record demos for $35 an hour. And Previtt suggested the song should begin with a slow, dramatic opening. I said, let's start the song in halftime with the chorus up front and then double time the verses. The first thing I thought of was Donna Summer's Last Chance.
Now I can only picture them dancing to MacArthur Park at the end of Dirty Dancing. Someone left a cake out in the rain. And he's lifting her up.
Well, the thing that was interesting about this too is Previtt said to me he had 100. I mean, this is the classic story that everyone goes to. I had $100 in my bank account before this song came to me. But I guess let's just take his word for it. He was selling used cars in his garage of his parents' house. He was living with his parents. He was 40 years old. And he was yeah, my mom and dad just said, stick with it. Keep trying. So, I mean, this is kind of incredible that Jimmy Einer actually wanted Frankie in the first place to try something.
Do we think that that's real, though? Do we think that he went through a handful? He went to Quincy Jones and Quincy laughed him out of the room. And then he had to go all the way down the list.
I mean, maybe because of the fact that everyone thought this was a porno, Frankie's probably the only one that says, well, even if I don't think it is, or even if you claim it's not, I'll still try it.
Jake, can you verify this? I read somewhere that I've Had the Time of My Life needed to be written with kind of a mambo backing track.
Yes.
This is true.
So Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze could dance because their original Sheldrake dance is a mambo.
Yeah, I feel like it was a little blurry because I think Donald Markowitz was the guy that kind of came up with the beat, the Latin beat. And I think that he was already inspired by a lot of the 60s Latin infused music. So it could get a little blurry there with if they wanted it specifically that, or if he just felt compelled because that was the era's Latin infused ideas going on at that point.
And there's such a big subplot in the movie of this is how to samba, this is how to mambo, this is how to bachata. Like that is
the pachanga.
Yeah.
And then I love how Patrick Swayze is like, we'll dance to the pachanga.
Yeah. He has to correct his pronunciation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that whether you want to say organically or like was handed down by the studio, like it makes sense that it has that little Latin infusion in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, a Lionel Richie song was meant to be the big dance scene at the end, but Kenny Ortega bumped it in favor of I've Had the Time of My Life, and it was the last song on the tape submitted for the movie's final scene.
This also feels very much like I had $100 in my bank.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I was
there are a lot of
late,
moments like
and they
that.
ran in with the tape and they put it in and they said, this is it.
What's also funny is that the Warrens and medley track, it wasn't like the singers on the track weren't like, that wasn't ready by the time the finale was filmed. So they filmed the ending to the demo with Previtt and Capelli's backing track.
Yeah. I mean, they had to put this on like right as they were finished filming. This was like the last few days. So Previtt had to do this song and then basically sing it. So they heard it so Kenny Ortega could then create choreography somewhat around it. So they were never going to get Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes to like just fly in for this song that they have no idea about. So yeah, then they got this crazy demo-itis out of it.
Yeah, so the demo version, it did appear later on a 1998 CD reissue of Previtt's 1981 album Frankie and the Knockouts, but it's only listed as, quote, bonus track.
And everyone loved it. Swayze said that it was his favorite version.
Yeah.
Probably because he listened to it 7,000 times while dancing.
Jimmy Einer had said like this was the worst case of demo-itis he'd ever heard from like a group of filmmakers. Like it was out of control. They did not want anybody else at this point.
So Bergstein, she wanted a famous 60s singer to perform I've Had the Time of My Life. It was purposeful. She wanted to blend the contemporary musical elements of the 80s with the aesthetics of the period. And the song was initially brought to Donna Summer and Joe Esposito, but Summer turned it down because, again, she thought it was
hell yeah
too porny. I wonder how she felt afterwards. But because she didn't like the title of the film,
probably
Donna
$14
Summer said
million
no.
poorer.
And later, producer Michael Lloyd approached Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates and Kim Carnes, which I would have loved to hear personally because I just really love the song Betty Davis Eyes, but they also declined. And ultimately, Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers was approached by Jimmy Einer, but he turned it down at first because his daughter was supposed to be born soon. He promised his wife he would be there for the birth, and he was concerned about appearing in another song. I guess he had recently done the song Loving on Borrowed Time with Gladys Knight from Cobra, which
a movie
flopped.
that rules.
I guess it didn't do so well at the time, and he didn't want to be on another song that was probably going to flop. But they did get him. It sounds like Einer approached Jennifer Warnes, who had just released a cover of Leonard Cohen songs. She initially wasn't so sure about it upon hearing the demo, but was persuaded. And then Medley came on because Warrens was attached to it, finally. And so they finally convinced Warrens, and then Medley is like, okay, I'll do it because I like Warrens. So these two singers already know and like and respect each other. And they agreed altogether that they would record the song in LA.
Jennifer Warren's boyfriend, actually, she told me, was really the impetus. She was like, all right, Bill's attached. Should I do this? He's like, do it. So shout out to Jennifer Warren's boyfriend in 1987.
We love to hear things like that.
Unnamed man.
But it was interesting too. I feel like that time period, I mean, the 1980s, there were a lot of hits being made just for original songs for movies. And then Top Gun had just had Danger Zone, Footloose, all those classics.
Tune into future episodes of this show.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you both now that when I met my husband, friend of the pod, Taylor Barefoot, who also wrote the music for NSYNC, he still had how when we were all younger, we had actual songs as ringtones. Yes. Yeah. And now everyone's phones are set up to vibrate. Well, Taylor's ringtone is still and was Danger Zone.
Fuck yeah.
And I just thought that was
shout out to
awesome.
Friend of the show, my fiance, Leanne O'Shea, who saw Top Gun for the first time in 2019 And then we went to a pre-screening of Top Gun Maverick in 2022. She bought a flight suit to wear to the screening. And as we were driving to the Aero Theater in LA, she said, if they don't play Danger Zone, I'm going to lose my shit.
And in the movie, yeah. they
absolutely did.
The new Top Gun,
slaps. It's great.
It totally slaps. But anyway,
well, I was also going to say Jennifer Warnes was like the hot commodity for if you want an Oscar original song, because she had It Goes Like It Goes in Norma Ray, and then she also did Up Where We Belong for An Officer and a Gentleman. So she had the bona fides.
Huge. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is something that I love about, so like, even though they were listening to the demo, it sounds like Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey and like the whole dance squad in the last scene, they were uplifted, no pun intended. They performed as they did because they just, like, the song just slapped that hard.
Yeah, and they had been shooting for months, and I think it probably breathed a little. A lot of filmmaking is standing in the grocery aisle saying, this is going to be delicious soup one day. Right?
It is a slog at times.
Yeah, and so they got a little bit of a glimpse of like what that soup was going to taste like, and I think it invigorated them.
Previtt had also said, by the way, that he had remembered this moment. Patrick Swayze came up to him. It was sometime before the Grammys or something, and he was like, I just want to let you know, like, we were not anticipating this movie to be anything close to good. He said, he was just going to be like, let's get this piece of crap over with. Like, that was his like direct quote to him.
Yeah.
And then Emil came in and Eleanor came in with the last cassette, and he was like, oh my God, we might actually have something.
The same effect crossed over to Warnes and Medley as they recorded the song. Cause like, to give emotional depth to the song, Warnes had the video playback and footage of the final scene brought in to synchronize her singing, and both of them were uplifted emotionally. Like, the vocals and the song did so well because the singers were actually able to watch as they were singing. So it's like this feedback loop.
And that's super not common when recording stuff for movies. And when Rachel is saying synchronize, like, they're not changing the lyrics or the timing of anything. The song is timed the way it's timed. What they're trying to synchronize is the energy, the zest, whatever that big moment. And you can really, despite me not liking this cue very much, you can really hear the extra sauce when Swayze does that lift and they take their vocals to the next level at the end of that song. Okay. So it's no secret that this is not my favorite cue in the film. It might be, in fact, my least favorite cue in the film. I think every song, with the exception of Hungry Eyes, gives a great sense of time and place. Love is Strange is one of my favorite musical moments in any film. And then Time of My Life comes in, and it takes me from like 60s nostalgia to 80s cheese. And it's a different time and place. And to me, it makes what should be a really romantic and triumphant moment a little bit goofy. So I know that I'm wrong. I know that the problem is with me, especially because Jake wrote his essay for The Ringer called How I Have Had the Time of My Life, Save Dirty Dancing. So I want to learn. I want to be educated. Jake and Rachel, why am I wrong about I've Had the Time of My Life?
Jake, please.
Okay, I'll start here. So I think you kind of started to hit on this a little bit, Rachel, with the idea of wanting an 80s song to kind of be infused into this movie. And the big factor for me was Max Kellerman has that speech at the end to his conductor. And he's talking, we've seen it all. We had served the first pasteurized milk at the border and all the war years and all that stuff. Lots of changes, and he's talking about all these changes happening. Like, this was early 1963. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt right now from That Thing You Do. Which takes place
subject of a future no, it will be by this point it will be
past episode in the future.
Okay, well, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I got to do an oral history of that as well.
Two-parter.
Yes,
we talked to Tom Everett Scott.
Oh wow,
yeah, he's great.
He's the best.
We worship.
He's so nice.
He's the best guy. And that was, that movie took place in 1964. Same vibes, where it's this very euphoric time, but you can kind of sense that everything is changing. JFK hasn't been shot yet.
Before the Beatles came.
Right. Vietnam hasn't happened yet. There's just this like kind of innocence, very much in tune with Baby, that has been preserved, but it seems to be eroding. And I think looking at the anachronistic way that you put in this 80s song, Max Kellerman is freaking out. He's all these kids they don't want to come to the Catskills anymore.
Trips to Europe. That's what the kids want.
Yeah. They're going away. And this song comes in, it kind of gives him an idea of this is what the future could look like. This is what this 80s song is bringing out in front of all these dancers and every generation. And by the end of the song, I mean, everyone is dancing and singing. They've got a whole band. I don't know how the band knew the song. It was on a vinyl. They just start playing in the background, just as all great 80s songs, musicals kind of do. But there's this kind of like idea of like Reaganism is kind of like recapturing, the 1960s. And vibe. It just feels like that there is a sense that by mixing these decades together, you're creating this almost timeless effect. And in some ways, like I mentioned, the 80s kind of gives this glimpse into the future of what music could become, what dancing will become. That's one way to look at it.
What you're trying to tell me is that this song unites the themes of the March of Time and loss of innocence, which also wraps into it the abortion subplot where like the only reason that Penny's life is in danger to begin with is because abortion is not legal and unsafe and performed in secret and a thing that people are ashamed of. I can't imagine living in a world where that would be the case now. And so the sub theme that I didn't pick up on is that the slow progress of time is not necessarily something to be afraid of. And we don't really need to look back on the 60s as a simpler, better time, just, a different and complicated time.
Right, because even Max Kellerman is in the 60s and looking back, oh man, it was a simpler time in World War II and 1930s and 40s and when we were growing up.
Yeah,
everyone had it great in the 40s.
And no one's doing the sock hop anymore. Like, that's over.
I did think it's kind of funny, like looking at Tito and Max's conversation, and they're talking about, like, Max is talking to Tito as though they all live through it the same way, which Tito is a black man, and that doesn't really get brought up in the movie. It's just something that I've noticed, and there are some issues with, there's only one black couple in all the Dirty Dancers, and they only dance together.
They're just like off in the corner, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that kind of comment that Max makes to Tito, if the movie were made today, he would be like the boomer character that is like things were simpler back in the 60s in my day.
Right.
And I think the music too in general, like even if you go outside of the plot, there is a general timelessness. Like the synths, the Latin percussive elements, there's something a little bit timeless about that in a way. Like pop music of that time still, I mean, we're still listening to 80s songs. There's still very much an infusion of 80s songs in today's music. So there is that kind of, I think, connective tissue where it was beneficial for the movie for its longevity, just because they're able to use music that is still recognizable and fun to listen to today, which, I mean, they couldn't have known, but there is that idea.
I think, unfortunately for me, my first exposure to I Had the Time of My Life was not on the radio when it was a big hit in 1987. And it was not for Dirty Dancing, but it was in the Carnival Cruise Line commercials.
Oh, yeah. Well, with Carnival, you get what you pay for. I'm sorry, Carnival travelers.
CEO of Carnival is a big fan.
I have a whole theory about cruises, and that you get out of them what you put into them, and Carnival is kind of like a lower tier of cruise, and you can't go frugal on something like a cruise because
boat safety. If Titanic has taught us anything,
but this is another discussion. I want to add though to what Jake said about why I've Had the Time of My Life is a great song, even though I'm going to just open this though with saying that I don't actually like the song that much as a song.
Oh, interesting.
I would not listen to it apart from
putting it
movie.
on a mix.
I would not put it on a mix. There are other songs on the soundtrack that I would put on a mix for sure. Yes, being one of them, or Hungry Eyes even.
Love is Strange is so fucking good.
But I think that like it's one of the most successful syncs of all time, given the background, how we know the song made the ending of the movie more of an emotional heart twist, and how we know that just the singers watching the dancing made the song itself sound more alive. And finally, to kind of build on the like time period aspects and the loss of innocence in the early 60s, this movie is so concerned with like cast. Like you have Baby's family who gets like the best cabin on the premises, and then you have caste system even within the staff of Kellerman's and the resort, and like who gets treated how. And this staff, like the Yale and Harvard educated staffers, you guys can romance, and like they're not told to keep their hands off of the women and the girls there. And then there's like the dancers and the entertainment crew, and you can like hint at sex and like we need you to look sexy and be kind of sexy, but only for money and lessons. You're selling your body, but don't you dare actually do anything.
Have any agency. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, there's this whole like tier system within the characters and the groups they inhabit in the movie. And in the last scene, you just see all of the, even for just a moment, those tiers will probably like come back up together like one of those little like dolls that are held together by string where you push the button and all the little parts collapse. But just for this one moment in time, everybody is like dancing together. It's kind of like a Shakespearean play where there's a wedding at the end and everyone comes together and is like rallying around this one exciting thing. And then that's what I love so much about the ending of this film and the song cue itself, because I think I read somewhere too that Warren's and Medley's voices are meant to be like Johnny and Baby, and Johnny even sings a little, or he like lip syncs to the chorus, and it's just such a moment stuck in time. It's like they say in 6 Feet Under at the end, you can't take a picture of this, it's already gone.
I never thought that Rachel would be taking the Fellini-esque approach of like life is pain and horrid, but let's get together and dance at a carnival like 8.5.
Well, I didn't even know I was doing that.
Hell yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, there's one interesting element too. I don't think we brought this up with the initial writing of the song, but Frankie Previtt was the only person to write this song as a duet. So when he heard the song about, okay, Baby meets Johnny, he's like, okay, well, it makes sense. There would be two voices in this song. Right. He was the only person out of hundreds of, submissions, I would imagine. And to go with your other point, Rachel, which is, I think, interesting, this idea of this big mixing pot at the end and everyone celebrating. Let's not forget, Robbie tries to get Baby to read The Fountainhead. Yeah. And, the fact that whole idea is, this idea of rejecting the collective good here kind of comes back in this really nice karmic way. And here is this girl who's basically created this entire environment where everyone now can be involved, and you're bringing in different races and ethnicities and different caste systems as well. I mean, everyone is in this kind of melting pot, so to speak. And so you have a very celebratory moment at the end that kind of is rejecting the early plot threads of what Robbie is trying to get. Yeah.
Yeah. Robbie is just like a 80s yuppie. Like douchebag.
Missed the Ayn Rand reference.
Oh yeah, so she's trying to convince him. This went right over my head as a kid, of course, but Baby is trying to convince Robbie, who has impregnated Penny, to like, I know he has the money, so to pay for the. She's trying to convince him to pay for her back alley abortion, and he won't do it because he is like, well, who even knows if it's mine, and I don't believe her, and I'm just a huge misogynist. And oh, by the way, I'm carrying a copy of The Fountainhead in my back pocket. It's in my jeans pocket. Here you go. Read this.
No one has a more punchable face than a dude carrying a copy of The Fountainhead
he has a copy of The Fountainhead, a very read through copy of The Fountainhead on his person, and he hands it and says, read this. It's a book I think you'll enjoy, but don't fold any of the pages or whatever. Like I have notes in the margin, and
hell yeah.
She's only 17. She may not know who Ayn Rand is, but all she is seeing is this guy being an utter douchebag, refusing to take responsibility for himself, and because he's like, some people count, some people don't. Mm-hmm. And then she's
rugged individualism.
Ugh, yeah.
Hell.
Anyway, I like how this movie does grow with you in that way, because there are some things that when I first watched the movie, I was like, I don't know what this book is, and now I'm like, of course I know what it is.
I mean, Aviv, has that inspired you at all? Has this idea of history?
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna become a libertarian. No, it does. It has backfired.
It did.
I think it has inspired me a bit to appreciate the movie more, because there seems to have been layers that I didn't pick up on or kind of was willfully ignorant to, that coalesce in that final dance moment. And to Rachel's point, like, you're definitely right that this is on paper one of the most successful syncs of all time, and the movie would not be as popular as it was or is without that sync. So I am definitely wrong. I could do without the synths. You take away the synths and I might warm to it.
If I can get like somewhat music nerdy here too, the thing that was interesting to me was there is the classic 1960s chord progression is like 1-6-4-5 generally.
Yeah, the like doo-wop chord progression. Yeah,
right. So you got Stand By Me, and you've got the Righteous Brothers Unchained Melody that uses it, and you bring one of the Righteous Brothers back. And John DeNicola was very adamant about how, he took that 1-6-4-5 idea and then just tweaked, I think it was the 4, but he made it a flat 7th, right? And so it kind of gives this real tension to that music until the big lift and release. And I thought that was interesting because, you're bringing in Bill Medley to sing this song, which is strictly about Max Kellerman's nostalgia. And you are kind of grounding it in the fact that this is an older singer, but even this older singer has now embraced the 80s and kind of evolved with the times in some way. And it is funny too that Patrick Swayze has now 2 movies in which a Righteous Brother sings his big song with Bobby Hatfield and Ghost.
Can I button on this conversation with a snippet from my Stereo Gum coworker Tom Brayan's number ones column, where he wrote about I've had the time of my life, and I think it will really summarize what we've been talking about here. So Tom writes, by the time the extremely long and anachronistic song ends, everyone in the ballroom has a whole new perspective. Old ladies are dancing. The owner of the resort is dancing. Baby's mom is dancing. The house band joins in. Baby's father, Jerry Orbach, admits to Johnny that he was wrong. Johnny lip syncs along with a song that will not exist for another 24 years. It's absurd and it's beautiful. Before that ending, Dirty Dancing hadn't exactly been going for cinematic realism, but it mostly took place in a world that at least had a passing resemblance to our own. In that ending, the film takes off into the realm of magical dream logic reverie. That ending is where we learn that Dirty Dancing is truly subjective storytelling. It's Baby rhapsodizing about this one beautiful experience in her life, telling the tale the way it exists in her imagination. It's memory as fantasy, which might be the purest definition of nostalgia.
So I know that you're a big Grease 2 fan, but let's talk Grease 1 for a second. This is akin to Sandy and
Danny,
thank you. Sandy and Danny like taking off in the flying car at the end of Grease.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll buy that for $1. I still have never seen Grease.
What?
I know. I could tell you what happens in it.
Aviv.
Maybe another analogy for younger audiences would be Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone going off to Pleasure Town, where he plays the jazz flute.
The jazz flute.
I like that much more.
Fantastic.
Aviv, really? Have you seen Grease 2?
I have seen no Grease. I've seen all of the High School Musical movies, if that counts.
Okay, well, no, it doesn't count. I haven't seen any of the High School Musical movies, but I always felt like I was too old for them. Because I also never had the Disney Channel, so that's like a huge blind spot in my...
During like deep COVID lockdown, I watched all 3 High School Musical movies in a day.
It doesn't seem very like you.
It changed my brain chemistry for the
in a good or a bad way.
Was so bad, very bad.
Yeah, I have no wish. I have no wish to relive those haircuts.
How many days was Get Your Head in the Game stuck in your head?
Get your head in the game. I watched that. I watched High School Musical, the musical series. big High School Musical head here.
You should watch Grease. You should
Okay.
watch Grease. I want to be there when you do.
You want to be there just watching me watch Grease?
I bet you Taylor probably hasn't seen it either.
I'm probably right. Too cool for that.
No, he just was a very like tunnel vision guitar person. Like
There's no guitars in Grease. I don't want anything to do with it.
No, he just didn't like. When we first got together, I was like, "You didn't see blah? What?"
Yeah.
And he is too cool because he was like, I was in a band at that time. I was like touring at that time. He was like literally doing cool.
1978.
No, but like when people were watching, because like it was always on TV or something, and he wasn't watching TV. He was watching maybe MTV, and that's it. But if you even watch TV, he didn't watch TV. He was like out like teaching guitar lessons at age 13 and up.
Taylor
and then
listens to the show, and he's gonna
and then he was like, he knows all this. He's heard me say it, like. So when we first got together, I was like, "You what?" But like, he's cooler than me, like as a younger person, because he was out doing cool things, and I was in my room watching movies and being sad.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, can we talk a little bit about the song on its own? Right, the song was released as part of the movie soundtrack, and some weird things happened. Right.
Yes. Well, the funny thing about that was this song was originally out, I think it was about 6 weeks. It dropped before the movie came out, somewhere around there. And it was like the full 7-minute version of the song. So like, imagine you're in your car and you hear this song and you hear, oh, Bill Medley has a new song with Jennifer Warnes. And then you hear this and you have no context for what this song is. And it's 7 minutes long. And
the build is just interminably long.
Well, there's that whole interlude too of just, saxophones and trumpets going crazy. And so they clearly botched it, because I think what happened was Vestron Pictures pushed the release date without telling the record studio or RCA Records that they were going to do that. And so it came out automatically. It was almost like it was in a queue and it just hadn't been updated. And so then they had to deal with the fact that they had this song that just basically dropped off the charts in a matter of a week or so. Jimmy Ienner actually then smartly decided to repurpose and create a smaller condensed copy of this song so that it could actually play on radio and make more sense and be a little bit shorter.
Yeah, condensed version is almost 5 minutes, which is still too long for like a quote unquote pop song.
Yeah. But to your point, I think earlier, like this again is not necessarily a song you want to listen to alone in the car or just if you're walking down the street. Like it really is the only place that this is meant for is banquet halls, for large gatherings, for celebratory moments.
Bar and bat mitzvahs.
Yeah. The nostalgia factor itself, like I've had the time of my life. I mean, you're basically saying, hey, it's graduation. I've had the time of my life here. Let's move on to a new thing. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, like I had mentioned earlier. I mean, that is kind of the venue for this.
Can you think of another song off the top of your head that is similar that you would never listen to outside of these venues or the movie?
Now that you've talked about Graduation, I'm thinking about the Vitamin C song Graduation.
That's true. It's because it was just played at so many graduations.
And it had like a very short radio life and then is just for graduations now.
That's true. That's true. That's a good one.
I mean, I was just thinking about Don't Stop Believing just because I don't think it's become so overplayed now and it's kind of ridiculous, but the idea of listening to that just on your own without anybody around you to sing with or to air guitar or whatever just kind of seems, it seems antithetical to listening to it.
So you may have zeroed in on one of the reasons that I dislike the song is I hate Don't Stop Believing too.
I hate Don't Stop Believing too, except when I saw Rock of Ages live.
Okay.
On stage. One of my first jobs out of college was working for the City Guide magazine. That was like not a very cool magazine, but we got a lot of free Broadway tickets. So I saw Rock of Ages on Broadway twice and it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Like,
yeah,
I went in
cute.
there.
I saw the movie.
Don't watch the movie.
Okay.
Too
late.
It's bad. But the show is so good. The movie, I have not seen the movie. I've just heard it was garbage, at least compared to the show.
No, Tom Cruise is great as Stacey Jacks. I feel similarly to Don't Stop Believin' about Uptown Funk. So I've been to a lot of weddings
Ugh.
And my fiance and I play a game called White People Wedding Bingo, where we like
So,
fill out our little cards.
anything with Pharrell.
Yeah. Anything with Pharrell, anything with Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars basically has released one album, and it's called Now That's What I Call Weddings. And so, Uptown Funk is once again had its time on the radio, and now the only thing I associate it with is like white people popping off at weddings.
Well, and that makes sense because the beats in that are so hypnotic, and then there's a space in between the beats for the DJ to come in. All right, everyone, come on out to the dance floor. But it does make sense. Yeah. Don't Stop Believing, just to go back. I mean, I was just thinking that off the top of my head, but it does make sense almost in the way that Dirty Dancing, that you don't like Time of My Life, because there is almost a duet aspect. It's just a small town girl.
Oh, yeah.
Just a city boy.
City boy.
I mean, you're setting up these two competing people.
It's a little musical theater-y for me.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. So, normally I really can't get down with musical theater, except for Rock of Ages.
Except for, let me tell you about Rock of Ages.
It was amazing.
So I have warmed to it a little bit, or at the very least begun to understand my dislike of it.
Okay, so we've unpacked it.
We've unpacked. This is more group therapy for me than anything else.
Self-awareness, first step. Yeah.
Well, should we talk about a few stats? Just go down and talk about how well this song did.
Incredibly well.
We did already mentioned that it got the Oscar for Best Original Song in 87. It also got the Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals in 88. It got the Golden Globe for Best Original Song in 88. It got an ASCAP Award for Most Performed Songs from Motion Pictures and ASCAP Songwriter of the Year. So 2 ASCAP Awards. In 2004, AFI listed it as 86, number 86 out of 100 for AFI's 100 Years, 100 Songs survey. And the soundtrack, I think we mentioned before, it went to number 1 on the album charts in November 87. It off Bruce Springsteen's Tunnel of Love out of the top spot. And this soundtrack stayed number 1 for 18 weeks. It's not bad. It kept selling well into 1988 to the point where Billboard named it the year's number 2 album. And that year, the Dirty Dancing soundtrack outsold Def Leppard's Hysteria, INXS's Kick, Michael Jackson's Bad, and Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Only George Michael's Faith sold more records.
So according to just the numbers, Dirty Dancing is the 3rd highest selling movie soundtrack of all time. Behind, can anyone guess the other 2?
I'm so locked into the Dirty Dancing space that I can't think about anything else right now.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Fever.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And The Bodyguard.
Wow, which I still haven't seen.
The Bodyguard is the highest selling soundtrack of all time. It's like not even close.
Which I believe John DeNicola worked on. So
I think you're right.
I think that's
it's the right era.
Crazy run for him.
His kids are paying for college. It's fine.
Well, the funny thing about that too was the most genius thing that Frankie Previtt did with John and Donald was secure the publishing. Like they told Linda Gottlieb, they're like, okay, look, we'll get whatever small sum of money for this song, but we get the publishing. And that is incredible because they both wrote it and get the publishing. You split basically all of it together. Yeah. Incredible.
Basically every story you hear about like a 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s musician getting hosed out of royalties, it's because they didn't retain their publishing, including like Aretha Franklin not getting paid basically anything for Respect because she technically did not write the song, even though she did. It's a whole fucking thing.
Well,
sorry to bum everybody out.
So I'm kind of stealing slightly from Tom, my coworker, because he has a section in the number 1's column on Stereogum called Bonus Beats. When a number 1 song has like a bunch of other instances in pop culture, and there were so many bonus beats that I wanted to like grab a few and just
talk about
them. So Time of My Life has lived on just through the ages. You cannot get rid of it. It will never go away, no matter how much of a time capsule it sounds like. In the 2006 finale of American Idol, which I never really got into, but
which we've all seen.
Yeah,
I was a big American Idol fan.
Really? So did you see this moment?
Yes.
Okay.
And Taylor Hicks, Soul Patrol. Where's my Soul Patrol at?
Wow.
All you Taylor Hicks heads.
All I remember about Taylor Hicks is that a lot of people at the time told my father that he looked like Taylor Hicks.
He was the zaddy, right? He
Yeah, because Taylor Hicks, he was a younger guy, I think, but he did go prematurely gray, and my dad went prematurely gray, but retained all of his hair, and so even though Taylor Hicks, I think, is like 15, 20 years younger than my dad, everyone just thought that my dad was Taylor Hicks. Because of their gray hair, salt and pepper. So anyway, Taylor Hicks and Catherine McPhee sang "I've Had the Time of My Life," and that feels like a very American Idol-y song to sing. Mm-hmm. So the Black Eyed Peas in 2010 reinterpolated. If you want to call it interpolate, I call it just
stealing.
I think that's more than interpolation.
Yeah,
I mean, I was going to ask, like, is Fergie doing it better than Jennifer Warnes? I mean, it's...
So they repurpose "I've Had the Time of My Life" for their 2010 single, The Time, Dirty Bit. Which just
drop that in there.
It's just one of those butt bleeding songs. Like you start to hear it and your butt's just immediately starts bleeding.
Wait. What? Can you do me a favor? I know that we're getting to the end of our episode.
Yeah.
Can you just define a butt bleeding song for me real quick?
Think about like if your ears are bleeding, but I always think of it's a really early like YouTube viral video where it's like a stick figure animation.
Oh yeah, like
you remember
the end of the world, like the Fire Z missiles.
Yeah, like it was like
Homestar.
Similar vein. Oh, rejected cartoons. That's what it was. Rejected cartoons, and like there's just one like bit in there where like a bunch of clouds. Like one cloud is like they're all dancing, yay! Everybody dance, yay! And then one of the clouds is like, my anus is bleeding.
Oh Jesus!
And then they're all like, yay! And he's like, no, my anus is bleeding. And then so, like, well, that's probably where like if in my head if I heard a song or watched something, but mostly just hear a song, and it's just so. God-awfully bad, and I realize this is a subjective thing, but I think we can agree that the 2010s and late 2000s for Black Eyed Peas is...
Well, I'm scared to think that I believe this probably would have been played around my senior prom. So I think I was probably dancing this at some point, just thinking, wow, Black Eyed Peas coming... I probably hadn't even put together the fact that this was part of Dirty Dancing world.
That's okay.
To take my rightful spot as the hater on the show, I feel like the Red Hot Chili Peppers might make my butt bleed.
Like whatever the opposite of an earworm is another phrase that I hate. A butt bleeder.
Great. I'm back in.
Okay, good. Anyway, so a band that I like considerably more, R.I.P. Fifth Harmony, but Fifth Harmony interpolated "I've Had the Time of My Life" in 2015 on Body Rock. And there's speaking of white people, there's a great needle drop in Get Out where near the end of the movie, Allison Williams' character, where she's wearing a white button-down shirt and she's been outed. I won't spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it, but
the one scene that everyone asks Jordan Peele and Allison Williams about is where she's eating Fruit Loops one at a time.
Yeah.
And she's, I guess, watching Dirty Dancing.
Oh, and drinking milk separately.
Right.
Yeah, from a straw.
And she's listening to "I've Had the Time of My Life," but she's not watching. She's listening to it.
I just assumed that she was watching.
No. So she's listening to "I've Had the Time of My Life," and she is going through photos of potential Black paramours.
The next victim. That's
the
right,
next
that's
victim.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Like
NBA pics and things like that. Which
further accentuating the point that you're kind of a psychopath if you listen to this song alone.
Yes.
It's true. That the song is incredibly white.
Right. By the way, I have some more pop culture additions here.
Please.
I didn't see on here, but I felt they had to be shared. And they're not necessarily just the songs, but the first thing is Crazy Stupid Love. They did that whole segment.
They did the lift. Yeah,
yes.
I was going to mention that. I love Crazy Stupid Love, and I think that the two of them together are just like dynamite.
And apparently Gosling had done that in real life for a girl. And that was what inspired that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe I left that out. That is that. Yeah. I dropped the ball.
The other one, there's a few more. There was the Super Bowl commercial with Eli Manning and Odell Beckham. which dropped during the Super Bowl. And Bill Medley said that he was in a casino in Las Vegas when he saw this and like heard his voice and was like, what is going on? And everyone's like, what? Yeah. He's like, well, yeah, another couple dollars in my bank account. So that was pretty good because that was the choreographer for that commercial was one of the choreographers for Hamilton. And she loved Dirty Dancing growing up. So it was like this really kind of full circle moment for her. There was also a United Healthcare commercial. Do you guys remember this? It was this married couple and they're in their kitchen and they're both talking about how this song comes on the radio and they're both, oh, this is our song. And they start mimicking the lines to each other. The husband turns around and the wife runs at him and then smashes him into the table.
And then it's like, aren't you glad that you have good health
insurance? Need health care?
Yeah. I do remember that.
Man, if only like health insurance was as good as its advertising.
I know.
But that is a good ad.
I have a great book for you to read, Rachel. It's called The Fountainhead. I've got it here in my back pocket.
But you have, but careful, you have notes in the margins.
Yeah, don't rip the pages.
There was also a TikTok back in like Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump era where they basically, it was like a town hall debate and they kind of mimicked the lines and the song dubbed over them with their mouths, and it was pretty good.
Oh, so, man.
I if you want to check that out, that's a good one.
I do.
I guess we should have Pokemon gone to the polls.
I think it was on The Ringer where they did an oral history of the Sears air conditioning ad.
The
cool, like I'll call now.
Yeah. How about tomorrow?
Yeah.
How about today?
How about today? Yeah.
Jake, I'm assigning this to you because I do not work for The Ringer, but
you should call it. See if they're hiring.
You should pitch an oral history on the United Healthcare commercial with them.
Yeah,
that rules.
Yeah,
because I guess it would be now the 40th anniversary. Well, no, 35th. I think we've passed a lot of the general.
We're at 36 years of Dirty Dancing now.
Okay, so we'll just wait 4 more years.
Yeah.
In 2020. E! News confirmed that Jennifer Grey was set to executive produce and star in a new Dirty Dancing film, a sequel. Plot details were not revealed, but Grey confirmed that she will be playing Baby in the new version. And she says, quote, I'm excited by the challenge of looking at it from the point of view of what happens when it's 30 years later and it's the 90s. What happens with that person that had that experience? What happened to her? And what is now relevant about the original story at a different moment, looking at it through a different lens. Jennifer also confirmed that the movie would be released on Valentine's Day, 2024. No word on whether or not someone will have the time of their life.
I love the newscaster element here.
I'm like stacking my papers.
It's less than a year away.
It's less than a year away. I worry that, there are interviews with Jennifer Grey as recently as 3 months ago, still talking about this new Dirty Dancing sequel. But I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I'm imagining the writer's strike might delay it a little bit. Yeah, who knows, man.
I have high hopes for it only because I'm not sure what exactly the order of events was, but when her memoir came out last year, then right in tandem, they released the news that like this was in development.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I've ever seen Jennifer Grey get the amount of goodwill as she got when her memoir came out. She was like on The View and on all these morning shows, and everyone just kept talking about how great she looked, which was really nice to hear because she deserves it. And that for so many years, people just could not shut up about how not great she looked.
I could never buy that she was like, oh man, look at this homely actress, Jennifer Grey. Oh, so ugly. Like I can't even fathom people saying that about her,
Are you talking like post nose?
Either.
Yeah.
I mean, I think post nose job, she looks fine and maybe a little less unique, which is what she was going for, but more than she bargained for in a certain way.
Well, the story actually is, can I tell you the nose job story? Like what really happened real quick? Okay. So she did not want any plastic surgery whatsoever. She was very against it. But since she wasn't really getting any work or any work that she wanted after Dirty Dancing, she finally lets, I think maybe either her mother, the industry, her agents, like a combination of all of those forces, convince her that, okay, I'll go in and she's like a really in-depth conversation with her doctor. She wants like just the tiniest amount of work possible done. Like she does not want to look different, and she's very clear about that. And she comes out of it looking like she wanted, and she's happy with it. Everything's good. And then she's on the set of another movie, and she notices that her, like the very tip of her nose is turning white.
Ooh.
And she's like, what's going on? And it's not getting better. And so she goes back. She's a follow-up appointment with her doctor, and her doctor's like, yeah, sometimes this happens. So we'll quit. It'll be a really quick fix. Don't worry about it. So she goes back under the knife, basically, and gets another procedure. And then that is when they give her what she really didn't wanted.
Like a princess nose.
Yeah, like she lost what, because I guess it was so noticeable that everyone started saying, oh my God, like you don't look like you. I didn't recognize you at first. And then, the rest of the story. But it was because like she went in there trying to be like, give me the least amount of work possible. And they messed it up.
In 1999 and 2000, Jennifer starred as herself in a sitcom called It's Like You Know, where basically every joke was about her nose. And it was, and she had to like kind of
laugh it off.
Weather that on camera. It was pretty bad. The show was like, okay, Grant Heslov's in it, but it's not, I don't know, man. Poor Jennifer Grey.
I think she's had the last word in a really good way.
I hope so.
Maybe this movie will be a way to course correct some of that too.
Yeah.
I was wondering this movie, let's say they bring back this song, which they most likely will.
100%. There's no chance that doesn't happen.
They have to, right? So who is singing it? Which two artists today would you prefer to sing it, I guess?
I mean,
Harry Styles?
Yeah, because they're talking about Harry Styles as one of the new characters. So it's like
I just took a total guess.
I think it's like Harry Styles, BB Rexa sort of thing. Like it's like people
Is
that
BB
we are.
Rexa A-list enough? Do you think?
I don't know, but we're too old. Ariana Grande, maybe.
Ariana Grande is, I think, going to be busy with Wicked related stuff for the next 5 years.
I forgot that was happening.
That is happening.
I will be first in line to not see that movie.
Dua Lipa is also somewhat a hot item because she's got the Barbie soundtrack right now.
Oh yeah, Dua Lipa's not.
But also her whole thing is like dance,
right?
Even though she's not like a dancer, but she writes music people can dance to.
We'll probably see like a different
version.
kind of dance remix of the song.
Yeah,
maybe a grunge remix. Who knows?
Oh right, because of the 90s.
Because of the 90s.
Oh, I really hope they do like club
that's what
90s rave,
like
a 90s rave version. I really hope they do.
Acid house. I had a time in my life.
No, get Seal to sing it. Seal,
please fucking kill me.
Maybe like Kylie Minogue or I don't know.
Oh, Kylie Minogue
too.
Well,
I was actually Kylie Minogue crossed my mind, but again, I don't know if she is super super famous, but she never achieved the A-list status that like in the US at least that she has everywhere else. So I feel like they will really go for A-list.
Yeah.
But Jake, you bring up a good point, which is like that it would be someone who was relevant in the 90s that they're kind of like dusting off, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like what Bill Medley was to that song. You kind of have to figure out a good analogy musically, which is tough with, I don't know, if you want it, because you do want to keep it that era. That
so yeah, Kylie Minogue might be a good.
Gloria Estefan.
Ooh.
Especially with the Latin infused idea.
Mm-hmm.
Love me some Gloria Estefan.
I'm gonna think on this.
One thing that I thought was funny too, another full circle moment with this song was Bill Medley obviously didn't want to do this song because of his baby McKenna that was being born in the winter, and now because of this song, he's now performing it with her.
Oh yeah,
on stages.
Oh, that's
like
cute.
She's now part of this like trio of women that sing with Bill, part of like their Righteous Brothers tours and stuff, and they sing this song together as a duet. So that's pretty cool, I thought too.
Yeah, and she's like close to my age.
Yeah.
So
In
yeah,
her
maybe
mid-30s or
just
so,
get Bill and McKenna to do it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Run it back.
Yeah.
Jake, you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure. I'm glad I could talk about it.
Do you exist on the internet in a way that you want people to observe, to perceive?
Yes, of course. Any writer who, well, I guess not now necessarily. Twitter is becoming a weird space, but I am on Twitter at
For
Jake,
now, yeah.
at Jake KS19.
Awesome. And you can check out all of our stuff. We're at the NSYNC Pod everywhere you get your internet. And I'm at Rambo Calrissian on Twitter and Instagram. Rachel is at Well, you have a whole fucking thing.
I'm different. Yeah, Instagram is Rebroads and Twitter is Rachel Broads. But if you can't remember those things, just Google Rachel Brodsky. I'm very SEO friendly, as I always say.
And you find us on the NSYNC Pod. We're always commenting and retweeting and reposting and stuff like that. And tune in next week when we do this all over again with another incredible needle drop. And until next time, I'm Aviv Rubenstein.
I'm Rachel Brodsky.
And I'm Jake Kring-Schreifels.
Saying nobody puts Jake Kring-Schreifels in a corner.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter code FACE at checkout. That's harrys.com, code FACE. Enjoy!